I think we're going to have a couple, wait a minute. Yeah, a couple more people joining us, but let's get started. If you want to chime in and ask questions, please feel free to unmute yourself. This is, more of a gathering. It's not a webinar where I just talk at you, I hope. So let's see if my friend, and there's Amanda, excellent. All right, let's get going. My name is Kristen Hansen. I think most of you know me. I'm the Wisconsin coordinator for the Campus Vote Project, which is a program of the Fair Election Center in Washington, D.C. This is our first year having staff on the ground in Wisconsin, and I am really excited to do this work. And thank you all for the work that you're doing on your campuses to help students register to vote and vote. As we talked about on the original summit on Monday, the statistics show that students who are registered to vote, vote at much higher rates than we think. Up to 75% of students who are registered will actually vote. This is a very large block of voters. So we really need to make sure, first and foremost, that we get everyone registered to vote. And then, of course, encourage them to exercise their right to vote. I thought it was a nice day to do this on Constitution Day, to talk about the fact that, we need to reach out to every community to get them registered to vote and understand the process of voting. And it's a good example of how equality and having something be equal and equitable are not the same thing. This is a classic image that I think most of, or at least some of you have probably seen before in diversity and inclusion trainings, but it really does demonstrate the difference that we're talking about here. So you can say, we gave everybody the same thing. So now everyone's equal and that's fair, right? Everyone's got the same little box to stand on. Obviously, that does not actually work, does it? Some people need a different kind of support than others. So it might mean that one person doesn't need a lot of help to register to vote. This, in a campus atmosphere, could be older students who registered 2 years ago. It could be your non-traditional students who have been voting their whole lives and they're already registered, they know how to do it, they're good to go. It could be faculty who are registered to vote and they don't need a lot of pushing from you. Then you've got people who maybe they have, in this example, this is the person in the middle here who just needs a little boost. These are students who live in Wisconsin. Because the way our voter registration works here, which we are very lucky, we have lots of opportunities to register and vote here. This is a student who is from Wisconsin and they already have a Wisconsin official ID or a driver's license. Even if they need to change their address on their with the DMV to reflect their current address where they live on or nearly off campus, it's still the easiest for them to register to vote because they can change their address with the DMV online with no problem. And then they can pop right over to the myvote.wi.gov website and register to vote very easily. Over here on the end where we need extra support are your students who either have never voted before, maybe their family doesn't have a history of voting, maybe they're relatively new immigrants, they just became citizens, they need a little help with that process, or your students who are from out of state and therefore do not have a Wisconsin ID or driver's license. You would have to give up your, say, Illinois or California driver's license in order to get a driver's license or an ID here in Wisconsin. Very rare that a student is going to do that unless they really think they're never going to leave the state. So, because obviously you go home for the winter, you can't drive now. Doesn't make sense. So instead, we have college IDs that will have special IDs that allow students from out of state to register to vote and vote here, but it's going to take a little extra explanation for them, a little extra attention. So we want to make sure that what we're doing is reaching out to every student in the way that they need to be reached out to. My friend and colleague Amanda Ali is on this call with us. She works for Vote Mob. They do a lot of campus outreach. Amanda, can you unmute yourself and see if there's anything you want to add to what I just said?
You touched on it very beautifully, Kristen. I really like this image and the way that you highlighted how it can relate to students and voting, because as we know, not everyone has the same accessibility or the same resources or knowledge. And so this image is really expressing that and like meeting people where they're at and supporting them the way that they need.
Great, thank you. Why don't you talk real briefly about what Vote Mob does?
Yeah, I would love to. Vote Mob Wisconsin, it's not even just in Wisconsin, it's in Pennsylvania and Iowa as well. Um, it's part of Movement Voter Project and the Student Power Network, and we are aiming to increase the student vote across Wisconsin and the youth vote as well. And we are across many campuses in Wisconsin. I am specifically at UW Parkside in Kenosha. While the other staff members are at UW Eau Claire, Madison, Green Bay, many other schools, Stout, and we have fellows, and those fellows are reaching their peers and encouraging them to vote.
Excellent. All right, so this is again an example of what we really need you to be thoughtful about when you're making your plans to help students vote on campus. One size does not fit all. So if you say, we're going to send an email out to the students that has a link to how they can register to vote and how they can find our website, and that's it, that's what we're going to do. All right, that's better than nothing. But you can't tell me that every single student reads that one email. In fact, you can probably look at the back end of your email program and see exactly how many people opened it and how many people clicked through on any of the links that you sent. If you don't personally have access to that information, you should ask someone because it is really revealing. So what you need to do is do more specific outreach to a lot of different groups of people in different ways. Now, certainly a lot of that can be done through social media. The deep dive yesterday was all about social media and digital organizing. And the recording of that will be sent out when we finish this meeting. We get this recording up on YouTube. I'm going to send out links to all of the meetings that we did this week. So yeah, you're going to need to take a little bit more time to make sure you're reaching out to every student in a way that will work for them. It's really kind of an interesting exercise, especially if you're working with a committee of people who are all trying to help students vote. You really want to sit together and be thoughtful about how you're reaching every student. Even if you need to kind of draw a picture, here's the different categories of students. Here's how we're going to reach out to each of them, those categories differently. You can, if you are a school that is part of NSEL, the National Student Learning and Voting thing through Tufts University, you should have a report. Someone on your campus will have a report that shows exactly which students vote by major. So you'll be able to see, we have a real problem with engineering students. Actually, that is true. Engineering students as a group tend to vote in lower numbers than other students. I don't know why, but that means maybe you need to do a little extra outreach to the academic fraternities and sororities around engineering. Maybe you need to reach out to the science department and see if they can do some special voting outreach for you. If nothing else, to specifically send emails to science students and engineering students and math students with links that make it easy for them to vote. And maybe you have a little message in there about why it's important for their particular voices to be part of our democracy. Again, I wanted to do this talk on Constitution Day, and I'll send it out later today for everyone to see. But this is really a good day to remind ourselves that we are trying to form a more perfect union. And we cannot do that if everyone's voice doesn't have the same meaning and the same power. And here, a big part of how we share our voices is through voting. So send specific messages, enlist your interns and student volunteers. I just had a great call with my colleagues at Carroll University in Waukesha, and they found out after they started working with Campus Vote Project and the All In Challenge, they found out that there were groups of students who were doing this work on their own, not knowing that there was a campus plan and a campus commitment to help students register and vote. So now we're all on the same page together. We have 2 democracy fellows there who are paid by CVP and trained to do this work. And now all of a sudden my 2 democracy fellows have a whole group of student volunteers that they didn't know were anxious to do this work with them. So that's really super helpful. And then of course, I know that I've had people from the League of Women Voters on these calls all week. Check on your connection to local nonpartisan groups if you need help. If you're at a relatively small campus and you think, or maybe it's a really big campus, any campus really, and you think, you know, this is going to be extra hard this year. We usually rely on the League of Women Voters to do voter registration drives, and that's not going to work this year because of, you know, we don't want to do things unsafely. But still reach out to them and see if they can help with online voter registration programs. There's lots of different, that's what they want to do. So think about those groups. You will want to make sure that they're nonpartisan groups. You will, of course, have your student Republicans and or college Republicans and college Dems, and maybe some other parties that are formed on campus that will be reaching out to their own students too, but you want to stay nonpartisan with the groups that you're using. Excuse me. I'm going to mute myself and let Amanda talk a little bit about this, and then I will chime in when she's done with some other thoughts. Amanda?
Yes, thank you. So one great way to understand where students are at with voting, and Kristen touched on this a little bit, is connecting with the student groups. So this is understanding what organizations are on campus and what work they're doing, specifically the ones that are led by marginalized students. Knowing their meetings, knowing their purpose, their goals. And some of these examples would be like BSU, Black Student Union, the MSAs, Muslim student unions or associations, the Greek orgs, academic fraternities or sororities, LGBTQ groups, athletes is one that is really great, artists, musicians, issue cause clubs, dorms, and other student unions.
I apologize for my coughing. It's that I have asthma, and the haze in my area is from the fires out west, and it's really starting to get to me. Anyway, I know there are a million other organizations that I did not touch on here. This is just a brief listing. But I want to touch a little bit stronger on this area about athletes. This is one of the things that was brought up to me recently. The athletes aren't as busy as they usually are this time of year, right? And some of them, of course, don't usually have their events until next semester, but they are very well known on campus usually, and they're itching for something to do. So having your athletes maybe do recordings, do a video of them all taking a pledge to vote, or doing a video of one of them, you know, working on registering to vote, of course, without showing private information, but, you know, really involving them in doing this. And then we thought, you know, expand that, because if you've got your athletes on campus doing special voting posts on your social media with your hashtag that you should be using so that students can find whatever they need to find about voting by using a hashtag specific to your campus. Do that with the arts students. Do that with the music students. Do that with the theater students. Do that with, like I said, the engineers, the scientists, any group of students who want to do their own videos about why they're voting, the fact that they've registered together, you know, all of these things that give you videos, graphics, whatever, that you can share around that show a specific student, okay, that person is like me. If that student is registered to vote, maybe I should be registered to vote too. They're looking for themselves in the work that you do. So be very mindful about things like this. I wanted to pull this out. This is the equity and inclusion page of Carthage College in Kenosha. And you can see here all the different things they have. They have the resources, they have campus initiatives around diversity and inclusion. There's a million different student groups that you can join. This is just a simple place for you to go if you want to help, or if this is your job on campus. You know, pop into this if you have a page like this, or find the list of student groups on your campus. And they usually have a contact. Sometimes it's an email address, sometimes it's a student's name. Figure out who that contact is and touch base with them. Make sure that they are sharing voting information with the folks in their club or their group. And if they hadn't thought of that yet, make sure you connect with them and send them whatever resources you can. If you have interns and fellows like the Vote Mob students who can do that, then they can go to one of their meetings. And when I say go to, it might be a Zoom meeting, but you know, they can pop in for 15 minutes and talk about registering to vote and how to do it and answer any questions. We want this to be as inclusive as possible, but also making it as easy for students to understand as possible. So it doesn't sound too legalese, you know? So find the place on your campus's website where they have all these groups, and make sure you reach out to any or all of them that you have time to do. And Amanda, talk about this building relationships thing here. And you can talk about spread the vote if you know it, and otherwise I will.
Okay, sure. This is really important. Rather than just telling students or putting out information about voting, building relationships with them is more likely for them to actually do it. And this will help administration or officials or even the fellows on campus peer-to-peer talking with one another as to what barriers are in place for students to prevent them from voting. So this could be something like someone can express to you, oh, I'm having trouble getting a voter ID, or the polling location is not accessible to me. The time I work too much, my classes are at this time, I don't know when to go. So these are the things that you can understand and learn from someone when you're having conversations and you're building those relationships with them, to hopefully problem solve with them and get them to the point where they would vote. And I'm not familiar with spread the vote, so I'll let you take that one, Kristen.
I put this on here just today as a little bit of an afterthought, but I want to make everyone aware of this group. Spread the Vote is a nonpartisan organization that works to help people get IDs to vote with if they're having trouble. So again, this, just kind of keep this in the back of your mind, maybe bookmark the page on your computer in case you hear about anyone, might be a student, maybe not. Most campuses, I think, make you show some kind of ID to get registered, but you might hear a student say, my mom or my aunt or whoever is not going to be able to vote because they don't have the right kind of ID, or whatever. In your regular life, you might just run into someone who's having trouble with this. Spread the Vote volunteers will help anyone get a Wisconsin ID, because if you don't have a driver's license, you can get a Wisconsin ID card to use for voting, and they will do it all for free. So, I mean, they will do everything from, they will pay the fee to help you get your birth certificate if you can't afford to do it. They will pick you up and take you to the DMV. They will stand there with you. They will help you fill the forms out. They will do every single thing they need to do to help you get an ID so that you can vote. So I do know people who work here. I can vouch for this organization. Fabulous resource in case you run into anyone who, for whatever reason, is having trouble getting the ID to vote. And then, of course, being inclusive in your images and language. Amanda, you can speak to this a little bit too.
Yeah, definitely. When you see materials and voting information that is inclusive to you or your identity, whether you see it in different formats, written or recorded videos in a different language, like maybe Arabic, and you see it, you gravitate towards it and you feel a sense of community because you're seeing something that is part of your identity. And it's very important to have materials in many different languages to meet all students and provide them that information.
And again, we're not saying that the students necessarily don't speak English, because that's not the point. I think Amanda put it very nicely by saying if it is a language that they hear spoken in their homes, they will gravitate toward that and just feel a connection to it.
Mm-hmm.
There also might be, especially with students who are relatively recent immigrants, some of the voting materials are a little bit difficult to read because it's not the kind of language that's everyday language. And it might just be easier for them to read some of the instructions in their native language.
Yes.
So, someone who speaks primarily Spanish might be able to get by speaking English, but for technical kind of things, maybe it's easier for them to read that in their first language. So think about providing some of the materials in other languages, whatever is the most common languages on your campus. I'm sure somebody has that information. And then, of course, when you're doing your visuals, make sure that a variety of students are captured in the actual images that you use. Um, I don't think that, and I'm going to speak as a white person here, I don't think that all white people realize that when all of the images you put out only have other white people in them, many students feel that that is not for them, that it's not, you're not including them, quite literally not including them in the images and in the invitations, which is what a lot of this is an invitation to click on the link and register to vote, or click on the link and learn more. You're not including them. I'm not saying you need to go completely overboard and try to make sure that every single kind of student you can possibly think of is included in one graphic, but maybe you have the same message, but with different graphics that you share on and off. Maybe there's a different one that's automatically posted or scheduled to post several times a week. Don't make one graphic and then think that that's going to be the only one you need to use. So use, and if you can use real photographs of real students who want to help with this work, that's great too. But be very conscious and thoughtful about the images and graphics that you're using to make sure that you are inviting every student to join your organization. And speaking of that, it is Constitution Day, and I put an exclamation point and a question mark here on purpose. Students are feeling a lot of pain right now. And this is a picture of a protest outside of Marquette University. And notice that most of these kids are white. The protests that are going on right now, the peaceful protests by and large, thankfully, are being attended by students of all kinds. So, and a lot of students that I speak to, especially students of color, but white students as well, feel very, very unsettled and uncomfortable right now. I've heard very painful confessions from students of color who feel the Constitution is not for them, not about them. There are certainly things that were written in the original Constitution that make that true. We have done our best to, okay, I'm going to correct myself there. We have a lot of work to do as a country to make sure that this Constitution really speaks to everyone. Students feel that very acutely. So, but that does not mean that they don't want to vote. They aren't proud to be an American citizen, especially new American citizens are very proud about that usually. And we want them all to feel part of our collective future as a country. So, don't make any assumptions about groups of students who may or may not be super excited to be part of democracy right now. We really want them, especially those students that are feeling like outsiders right now, to be brought into the fold and told that their voice matters just as much as everyone else's, and that having a vote is a huge part of how they can express that voice. So again, be very thoughtful and conscious about how you're reaching out to students that way, and listen to them if they need to vent or to cry, or to just really need to talk to someone about how they're feeling about everything right now. And I wanted to post this again too, but speaking of the Constitution, this is a quote from Thomas Jefferson that is inside his monument in Washington, D.C., where he talks about frequent changes in laws not being not wanting to change the law constantly, but certainly with progress of the human mind, some things must change. He did advocate for a living constitution, and acknowledged the fact that as things change and as the country moves forward, so must our laws. And he included the Constitution in that thought. So this is just a really gorgeous picture of the Jefferson Monument, so I wanted to end on that. But so that is all I have as far as a formal presentation. I really want to hear from you all about what's going on your campus to make sure you're reaching to all students, and what other ideas do you have and are built into your programs to cover this. Carrie, do you have a thought?
Oh, I see a lot of my colleagues on here, which is fun. Hi, Aislinn and Amy and Kelsey at UWL, I think. So I found this very helpful. It got me thinking. We have our NSLUV reports and I've dug into them, but I really hadn't looked too closely at the program. So thank you for mentioning that. I just pulled out some of the programs that we could reach out because
good.
Virtually we were kind of challenged by that last week, thinking about how do we, most of our classes are asynchronous. So just posting something in Blackboard might not be really effective, but if we work through the faculty member and if we use this to be more strategic, I think that could work.
Good. I'm glad you're thinking about that.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And as you're thinking about all this, please keep in the back of your mind that date of October 14th, because it's easy. Students can register online or by mail up until the 14th.
Okay.
And then after that, there's kind of this pause where they can only register with their city clerk until election day. So pushing people toward that October 14th date will be a big weight off your mind if you can know that most of the students got registered by then.
Can't they register on day of voting at their polling place?
They can, right.
Okay.
So there's like this, that's why I said there's kind of this.
It's like that gap.
Excuse me.
Those few gap weeks.
There's this gap week where, exactly. Where you can't register online or by mail. You can still register until October 30th in the hours that your city clerk allows voter registration, and that varies. Mm-hmm. So that's not terrible. You just have to go there in person. Check the website first to make sure they're doing it and when they're doing it. But then, yes, your last ditch fail-safe is you can always register when you go to vote at the polls in person.
Okay. Yeah, I think we recognize the need to reach our students of color, but we feel even more challenged by that because we just don't have those special diverse groups, clubs and whatnot on our campus. And so,
oh, really?
No, we're a technical college. And so our extracurricular life is a little bit less than our curricular life. So we have, we'll have to think a little more creatively about that, but we do know what programs have higher numbers of students of color, so it might just be reaching out to those programs.
There you go. Does anyone else have any thoughts about the particular challenges of doing this work on a technical college campus, and how, any ideas for Carrie? Do you want a democracy fellow? Would that be helpful? I can give you a democracy fellow.
Well, we do have a SEEP fellow.
Okay.
So, I mean, because when you say give me a democracy fellow, like you wouldn't have the actual person, you would just have the position.
I would have the position. You could tell me who you think would be a good student to do it, and I will train them and pay them to do that work on your campus. And then
Okay.
they can work with the SEEP fellow, and they
Yeah.
can work together.
Okay. Yeah.
So why don't you see, especially if, and I don't know who your SEEP fellow is, but see if you can reach out to a student of color from one of those programs, or it's maybe a professor who has a lot of students of color in their program, and see if they can make an announcement in the class. If there's someone who wants to, make $500 and do this work,
Okay.
I would love to offer you that.
Cool. I will, yeah, I'll get on that.
Okay.
Yeah. And Aislinn and Amy are both at my college. So I think they're challenged by the same things I'm challenged by, but both of your ideas are helpful. So I will go forward with that.
Thank you. Anything else, Kelsey? What's going on your campus?
We had some plans in the works for our National Voter Registration Day, and then going virtual this week, we have had to change all of those plans.
And you are at La Crosse?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you guys are all virtual, right?
Yes, for the next 2 weeks. And so for our plans for next week, for National Voter Registration Day, we're doing a lot of changing of that right now. So that's been a challenge for us. But I have 2 SEEP interns and an Andrew Goodman Foundation ambassador. So
okay.
The 3 of them are working as a team, and they're doing a lot of social media promotion right now. And then they've planned a Zoom event for the day of National Voter Registration Day.
Excellent.
They're trying to figure out kind of like what they're going to do at that event right now. But
what time is that event? Do you remember?
4 p.m. I think they said.
Because our democracy fellows are doing one at 7 that night too. So I'll send out the information to everyone. So if you have students who couldn't make the 4 o'clock one, maybe they can pop onto the 7 o'clock one.
Perfect. Yeah, that would be awesome.
It's for any student anywhere in the state. We don't care where you're going to school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. That would be awesome. I'll share that information with them. They are trying to work now with athletics, and then seeing if there's any way to do like competitions between the athletic teams or through the resident office, to see if, just to kind of get more people excited about registering, since we can't be in front of their faces now to get them registering. So
yeah, that's a really good idea. Like I said, when I spoke to the folks at Carroll this morning, they were saying the athletes feel like they have nothing to do, but they're trying to stay connected to each other because they're, they're not playing. So this is kind of something for them to do as a team.
yeah.
And maybe that's, make it a team project, and at least they're getting some connection that way.
Yep.
How are the students feeling about this 2-week shutdown? How's it going?
My students in particular, they all say that they saw it coming, but they didn't think it would be so soon. They're struggling with everything that's happened so quickly right after starting school.
What a shame.
They, they just hope that it's over after this and that they can be back on campus, really, is what I've heard so far.
Well, good luck to you. I know this is a challenge for everyone. I just, it's what it is this year. It's just not going to be normal. I'm afraid that students are just going to have to kind of buckle down and get through this year, or at least this semester, and we'll see if things change in the spring. But yeah. It's just it's just the year that everything is weird.
Yes, it is, for sure. Yes.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Ankit, am I pronouncing your name right? Probably not.
Yes,
Oh.
you're pronouncing it right. Perfect.
Good.
It's perfect.
How are you? What's going on your campus? Where are you?
So yeah, I was waiting to chip in. I am a seat fellow at University of Wisconsin Parkside,
Oh, great.
and we are currently hosting a drive-through and walk-in registration for the NVRD celebration on the 22nd and 23rd.
Okay.
And I've just been working on online promotions. However, Miss Hanson, the one which you said about online promotions with athletes is something which I've made a note of, and I'm planning to do like it soon. Because if athletes promote this event, we can ensure more registration on that day.
Oh, good
So
idea.
yeah,
How are things going in general?
in general, things are going good. The campus is still open, and it's really good.
And have you started registering students yet, or are you focusing mostly on the 22nd?
So we started registering students since yesterday through our library.
Okay.
However, our main focus, as in seat fellow, my main focus is for the drive-through on the 22nd and 23rd. And I'm currently ensuring that I promote it well. And we started, like as you mentioned, that every college by now should have their own campaign. And we have a campaign which is hashtag Park the Vote. And there's an Instagram page as well for that. And yeah, so we're just trying to boost that event and then lay our basis on social media on that event and grow up further ahead.
Excellent. Good for you.
Thank you.
Jacqueline, do you have any questions, comments, additions? Or did you just join?
I wanted to connect with Ankit afterwards. I wasn't sure, Kristen, if you were sending out our info in any way for all of us to connect, or we should just get each other's emails now.
I would say, yeah, put your, if you want to connect with each other, put your info in the chat. Oh,
The
there
chat,
are some
okay.
comments in the chat.
Okay.
Western Tech, yeah. Oh, vote parties. Yes, Amanda, let's talk about that.
Yeah, this is something that my team is utilizing now, up the next weeks up until the election. We're utilizing a tool called Motivote. We would host vote parties and invite 10 people close to us to this party, and it's a Zoom call, like 1 hour typically, sometimes it's a little bit less. And right away, those 10 people that are on the call, we would assist them with signing up on Motivote, and Motivote goes to third-party websites and it cross-checks your voter registration status. It checks that you requested an absentee ballot, and basically as a host, it reminds the host if you didn't do it as my guest a few weeks prior, and then I can follow up with you. So it's very relational in that sense. The cool thing about it too is for completing tasks, like for completing, like writing in your birthday on Motivote, you get points and then you can win prizes.
Oh.
Yeah, and so I'm hosting vote parties. I can invite any of you to it. And if you feel comfortable, you can have your own vote party, or fellows can have their own vote parties, and it just goes on and on and on. That's essentially the goal. And yeah, I know I invited you, Kristen. If anyone else would like to attend a vote party, I'll put my email in there. And even if you are still registered, we get a lot of people that say, I'm already registered, like why should I even come to a vote party? It's a space to meet other people that care about voting, to talk to one another. And there is mistakes that happen with your registration and with your absentee ballot. So we can answer any questions right there. We can double check on things in the call very quickly with you. And you can just build community with one another. You can meet other people.
Can you put the link to that Motivote in here? It's how is it spelled again?
Yeah, it's a weird spelling. Let me write it in the website.
I think it's supposed to be short for motivation, maybe. M-O-T-I. Anyway.
And I'm having a party on Friday at 2, but again, I'll have more next week. So again, if that's something you guys just wanted to learn about, to become familiar with, see if it's something you can utilize at your campus, then feel free to come to my party.
I can get that out to people too when I send the links to all of this stuff. Yeah, MOTI vote. So I think maybe it's short for motivation, but either way, that's really handy. Jacqueline, do you
Yes.
have any questions? I think you joined us late.
Well, what happened is I joined you at the beginning and I got in the first 10, 15 minutes.
Oh.
And then I was contacted by a student.
Ah,
And so she took a priority and I needed to get her squared away. And then I came back in at the end. So yeah, I will be looking forward to, are you recording this session?
I am. We will
Okay.
be sending this out. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll catch up, and yes, I would love to be included on the list. I'm ad hoc faculty at a university, but I'm also involved with the League of Women Voters, and so my connection is trying to make all these things fit together. There's so many, but I have to learn about them first.
What campus are you at?
UW Oshkosh.
Oh, great. I am happy to speak to you because Oshkosh is one of the campuses I would love to put a democracy fellow at, and I've been unable to contact someone there. So yeah.
Well, here's when I say I'm at UW Oshkosh, it means I'm sitting at home doing this all virtual.
Well, yes, of course.
But it is my goal to find out who on campus would be the key person to get things going. If it's a member of a certain organization on campus, if there's an administrator that can pave the way for this somehow.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So give me a few days here yet to do some exploring on that. I have a regular meeting on Tuesday afternoons with my colleagues, and they might be able to give me a direction on how I should proceed.
That's a great idea.
Meanwhile, that student who needed my help in this while we were doing this, she hadn't registered to vote yet, so I told her how to get on the My Vote and request an absentee ballot for her and her husband. So
there you go. See, that's fantastic.
It just happened.
Yeah, that's actually the other thing that we can really start. The ballots should be dropping any minute now. So, and some people might even get them in their mailboxes today and tomorrow. So yeah, as long as you're on with a student and helping them register to vote, they can pop right once they're registered. They can stay right on the My Vote website and go over and vote the ballot. I will say we are really lucky in this state to have such wonderful online tools to use. There are still some states that do not allow online voter registration, Texas being one of them. So I have a colleague in Texas who is really stuck because after a certain date in early October, you can't register to vote anymore at all. They don't have online voter registration and they don't have day of voter registration.
Can you go to their municipal clerk and register in that?
No, I don't know the answer to that.
Because that seems like you're denying a lot of people.
No, when she talks about it, she says we've got to get everyone registered to vote by whatever date that is. And I think like October 5th or 6th or something. But yeah, it's really, it's much more restrictive that way than it is here.
Well, it is restrictive, it's prohibitive, and it's even worse for college kids because of the moving thing.
Exactly. And that is one weird thing here that, you know, I keep reminding people, you have to have lived wherever you live for 28 days in order to vote in that district. But usually college students are only moving within the state if they end up having to go home, or they move, you know, across campus to a different apartment or something like that. So that's not that bad. You can still figure out how to do it.
You can go register, you can go vote in the place where you used to be, where you're still on the rolls.
Yeah.
If it's not far.
There's all these little weird things that can come up. And actually, I think I'm going to set some kind of office hours, like maybe a Friday afternoon, every other Friday at 3 or something like that. I'll just open up a Zoom link and anyone who wants to pop in and ask questions can do it. There's just always things coming up.
The other piece to interject is you can't, and I don't know if Wisconsin, if Texas are different in this way, but I don't believe you can prohibit someone from voting for the president. You can prohibit them from voting the whole ballot because they don't live in that area. They have to prove their residency in that area, but they sure should be able to vote for president no matter where.
That is another very not widely known thing. We covered this in the first session on Monday, the deep dive on voting. You know, even if you just move, because of obviously this happens, people move for work or whatever, or for family reasons. But if you have just moved to a new state, they have to at least let you vote for president. So it's really interesting. I've only seen it happen once. I've only seen it happen once, where a man had just moved to Wisconsin, and the chief inspector, had to kind of look it up and figure out how to do it. I don't actually recall if it was a special ballot with just the president option on it, but it took a little bit of doing. But they got him a ballot. And yes, you do get to vote for just the president. So in the cases where that happens, as long as we're talking about this, the other thing, when you're talking about and talking to diverse groups of students, again, who might be first-time voters, and maybe even their families are first-time voters, so they don't have, just not a lot of experience with it. You get 3 chances with your ballot, whether it's a mail-in ballot or in person. You can mess up 2 of them and you still get that 3rd chance. It's obviously pretty easier if you're voting in person, and you can go right back to the poll worker and say, I messed this up, I put my dot in the wrong spot or whatever you did. And they give you 2 more chances. Same thing with mail-in ballots. If you realize you did something wrong, you can contact your city clerk or village or town, your municipal clerk, and they will send you up to 2 more new ballots. And obviously only accept 1 of them back. But if you can feel, a little bit less anxious about it. If you mess it up, you do get other chances. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's all these strange little things. There's also the provisional ballot, that if you go to vote and you forgot your ID, you can vote a provisional ballot and come back by that Friday with your ID, and your vote will still count. All these little things that are part of the law, but relatively rarely happen. All right. Any other questions, comments, some ideas to share that you've thought about maybe while we've been on the call chatting? Last call. All right, I've given you all a lot to talk about, and I will be getting all 4 of the videos from this week will be posted by tomorrow at the latest, if not later today. I've got some colleagues who know how to do the fancy thing and load it up to YouTube. And thank you, Amanda, for joining us. Do you have any final words about inclusion on campuses?
I think we've touched it all, but thank you for inviting me to be part of this discussion. And I'm glad I was able to meet some people that we're going to connect with later on.
Excellent. All right. Thank you all for the work you do. Thank you for caring about voting. And if you have time today, I did send an email out with a link to the classic Schoolhouse Rock 5-minute cartoon about the Constitution that is still really fun to watch. So take a minute and watch that, and remember that we are still in the greatest country on earth. Thank you all so much, and we will be talking to you soon.